These are my top 10 candidates to become the American League's 2024 Rookie of the Year. This list does not represent my long-term outlook for each of these players, but rather how I think they'll perform and be recognized for the 2024 season. Number 10, Kyle Manzardo, Cleveland Indians. Kyle Manzardo would not have made this list if it weren't for a trade that sent him to Cleveland late last year in the Aaron Civale deal. Manzardo is an undersized first baseman at 6 feet 205, and he's more of a hitter than a slugger. The problem is, he didn't hit so well either this past season, batting just .236 in AAA with 17 home runs in 351 at-bats. The year before, Manzardo killed high A and double A pitching by hitting .327 with 22 home runs in just 324 at-bats. Had he still been with Tampa Bay, his path to enough at-bats would have been difficult the way that the Rays platoon as many players as possible, especially youngsters. With Cleveland, he'll presumably receive more opportunity from a team that specifically targeted him as a trade return. I think a reasonable season for Manzardo could include a .272 average with 23 home runs while hitting 5 or 6 in the lineup and moving up if he breaks out. Number 9, Jackson Jobe, Detroit Tigers. Jackson Jobe had a lot of hype after being selected 3rd overall in the 2021 draft by the Detroit Tigers. A lot of buyer's remorse may have been felt by Tiger fans after watching him struggle to a 4.52 ERA and a 1.36 whip in his first taste of Pro Ball, and that was just at the single A level. Jobe got back on track this past season, however, with his walk-to-strikeout ratio turning heads to the tune of 84 strikeouts to just 6 walks. The year before, it was 81 to 30, so a dramatic difference. A 3,000 RPM slider is Jobe's best pitch, but it's not really effective unless his fastball is hitting its potential in the high 90s, and it did this past season, as well as in the Arizona Fall League, where he was arguably the biggest name for fans and scouts to see. That performance, along with a successful spring, should get him a spot in Detroit's rotation where I could see him up and down throughout the season, but if it's more up than down, maybe expect 10 wins with an ERA in the high 3s and a bit more than a strikeout per inning, maybe in the 130 to 150 range. Number 8, Ricky Tiedemann, Toronto Blue Jays. Everything I just said about Jackson Jobe, copy and paste for Toronto's Ricky Tiedemann. Okay, I'm just kidding. But yeah, they're actually very different, but they do have some similarities that I'm going to get into. Tiedemann was born just 19 days later in 2002, but he tried to get drafted in 2020, but did not get selected in that 5-round COVID draft. 2021, when Jobe was selected 3rd overall, Tiedemann went 91st overall in the 3rd round to Toronto. Tiedemann doesn't throw as hard as Jobe, but he's a lefty, so being mid-90s is more than enough for him to be effective, especially with his mid-80s changeup that can be compared to any of today's top lefties. He's not guaranteed a spot in Toronto's rotation for 2024, but like Jobe, he had a strong Arizona Fall League after a disappointing and injury-riddled 2023 after breaking out last year. Again, a strong spring should force him into the back end of Toronto's rotation with projections that I would put slightly ahead of Jobe's, say a 13-8 record with a 3.77 ERA while striking out 160 over 150 innings or so. Number 7, Jasson Dominguez, New York Yankees. If you're any bit of a baseball fan, to have clicked on this video, certainly, and then watch this up to now, you're undoubtedly very familiar already with Dominguez. From his conspicuous extra S in his name to the hype that has surrounded him since he was compared to Mike Trout, Mickey Mantle, and Bo Jackson at the age of 16, to his renowned nickname, The Martian. I mean, come on, what more can I tell you about Dominguez that you probably don't already know? I can tell you he's been on a roller coaster ever since turning pro, with extreme highs and extreme lows. After being anointed the next one, he was just as quickly considered a bust by many, failing to wow anyone with home runs, consistent hitting, or even blazing speed. Then, after a surprise call-up to the Bigs last summer, he homered in his first game and hit 4 home runs in 8 games before going down with a season-ending injury. The Yankees have said that he has not been promised the center field job once healthy, so he'll have to earn it. But if he does, his ceiling is so high. I mean, it just becomes a question of, will we see part of that in 2024? Has a switch been clicked on? Or is this just another swell that will eventually come crashing down, sort of like the course of his career so far? If he does earn it, we might see him hit .255 with 22 home runs while also stealing 35 bases for a now dangerous Yankees lineup. And that's considering that his season might actually start off a little bit late as he's recovering from surgery. Number 6, Mason Miller, Oakland A's. This is going to be my surprise pick that I think most other lists won't have, but consider my reasoning. Miller throws absolute gas. His fastball is regularly in the triple digits, and he controls it well. He is a top 5 power arm in the majors already, if not being number 1 right now. But it's that constant burden of his arm that ended his 2023 season. I think I can say with a strong degree of certainty that Mason Miller will have Tommy John surgery at some point in his 20s. Heck, maybe again in his 30s. He puts that much strain on his arm, milking every ounce of velocity out of his moneymaker. But until then, he has special talent. And Oakland, recognizing that, plans to use him as their closer in 2024. Not because he's not effective as a starter, but to protect him from himself. Miller's 2023 AAA numbers were video game-esque. 4 starts, 12 innings, no runs allowed, and just 3 hits and 3 walks, while striking out 23 in 12 innings. He did decently in 10 games for the A's as well, when considering Oakland's defense behind him and a lot of close calls that he wasn't getting. Obviously, you can't expect him to get a lot of saves in Oakland, but I could still see him among the top closers in every other stat, like a sub-2 ERA, a sub-1 whip, and something like 80 strikeouts if he can get up to 50 innings on the season. And even for a historically bad Oakland team where almost all their wins will come by 3 runs or less, I can see Miller with 20 to 25 saves. I think the only thing that might slow down his breakout could be an injury, or perhaps suppressing his usage to prevent an imminent injury. Number 5, Wyatt Langford, Texas Rangers. A lot of people will have Langford as a top 3 Rookie of the Year candidate, if not number 1 or 2. And I absolutely don't blame them. Certainly, for the long-term outlook of his career, he is 1 or 2 for me in all of baseball, not just the American League. But I'm dropping him down a bit because this is only about 2024. What he did in his 2-month taste of professional baseball right after destroying NCAA pitchers in the spring of 2023 could go down as one of the best years of baseball ever. The crazy thing is, he just seemed to get better and better after each promotion that he got in the pros. He was seen as the 1B college hitter to Dylan Crews going into the 2023 draft, but their pro careers have been a different story. Crews hit just 208 in 20 games at AA, while Langford hit 405, almost twice as good in his 12 games at that stop before crushing AAA pitching with a 368 average in 5 more games at the highest minor league level. Langford was expected to be drafted 3rd by the Tigers, but instead fell 1 pick to Texas, the reigning World Series champions. So yeah, the rich get richer with a prospect that has basically been perfect so far in his professional career. The only knock on him is that he's only had 161 professional at-bats to date. Half of those at high A, but he's been about as good as possible, hitting a combined 360 with 10 home runs, 12 steals, and 36 walks to just 34 strikeouts. The outfield is full for Texas, but they could use Langford as a DH and a 4th outfielder just to get his bat into the lineup if it does continue to rock pitchers in spring training. And if it does, he could very well end up as a 330, 100 guy with 20 steals as well. But I'm going to be a little bit more conservative, expecting him to start lower in the lineup with the defending champs. Let's say 280, at least 25 home runs, and say 70 RBI. You can see why others will likely have him in their top 2 or 3 for Rookie of the Year. The only question is, can he stay hot forever after only 161 professional at-bats? That's enough for me to drop him below the other 4 on this list. And number 4 is Colt Keith, Detroit Tigers. Colt Keith is a prospect that seemed to come out of nowhere. He was taken in the last round of the 5-round COVID draft in 2020 by the Detroit Tigers, and what a find that he has been. His numbers have actually always been good, but he just hasn't stayed healthy, so his counting numbers have lagged behind his peers. 2023 was different, though, as Keith got to the plate 507 times to crush 27 home runs with 101 RBI in just 126 games, split pretty evenly between Double and Triple-A. His strikeout-to-walk ratio is a solid 2-1, and he's not really blocked by anyone at third base with the Tigers, so unless he falls flat on his face in spring training, he should have a good chance to break camp with the team. And that should be enough to give him an edge on the other guys that I've already mentioned, as well as some of the guys on my honorable mentions list. If Keith gets off to a good start in April, I could see A.J. Hinch being aggressive and batting Keith somewhere in the middle of the order. And if that happens, I could easily see him in the 280 range with 25 home runs and more than 80 runs batted in to put up a solid case for Rookie of the Year. Number 3, Junior Caminero, Tampa Bay Rays. Guardians GM Mike Chernoff has to be feeling the glares of Cleveland fans after trading away Junior Caminero to the Rays after the 2021 season. And who was it for? Toby Myers. Who? Exactly. Toby Myers, who's now 25 and probably a long shot to ever contribute at the major league level. Caminero, on the other hand, debuted as a 20-year-old last season for the Rays, who traditionally hold prospects back. But how could you hold back a guy who's hitting .324 with 31 home runs in just 460 at-bats, most of those at Double-A? His minor league OPS is .938 in 845 at-bats. Even in 7 games at the major league level, Caminero didn't look out of place at all as he homered among his 8 hits with a .235 average. Not horrible. It appears that Tampa Bay will have at least one spot open on the left side of their infield for the 2024 season, so Caminero should be part of the opening day roster, I would think. And with the Rays taking it pretty hard with their last can't-miss prospect, imagine how badly they would love for Caminero to become their new poster boy. I think there's no doubt that he'll be asked upon to produce for the Rays immediately because they need a new story to change their narrative. And if Caminero answers, he could be capable of a 30 home run season with a 300-like average and 100 RBI. Yes, that is entirely possible. And if that does happen, Mike Chernoff better get a great season out of Kyle Manzardo or just never, ever, ever trade with the Rays again. Number 2, Evan Carter, Texas Rangers. Winning Rookie of the Year is often about opportunity, and it's hard to imagine anyone getting more opportunity than Evan Carter, especially after what he did last September, coupled with what he continued to do in October. Carter had always been considered a great prospect, but just not quite in the conversation of the best prospects. Probably not even considered as good as Wyatt Langford at this moment, but for 2024, I like his projections better. And that's how his 2023 season started. With a .280 average at Double-A, 12 home runs in 97 games, .862 OPS. But then he was moved up to Triple-A, .353 average in 8 games. Get up to the majors, kid! .306 average in 23 games with 5 home runs and a 1.058 OPS. .300 average in the postseason with a .500 slugging percentage, all while being trusted to hit third for the eventual World Series champs. I mean, do you really think that he's going to get a demotion in the lineup after a bad week or two after doing that? And hitting behind Semien and Seager and in front of Garcia, Heim, Young, you think he's going to rack up some counting stats? You bet. And his run last year reminds me a lot of Randy Arozarena, who of course went on to win Rookie of the Year after a late season call-up that led to a big September and October. If Carter is the 3-batter for Texas for much of the upcoming season, he could very well hit .275 with 15 home runs, but also score 100 runs while driving in over 90. And don't forget, he can run as well. I don't know if you'd want him running that much with some of the guys hitting behind him, but in the right conditions, he's capable of stealing over 20 bases. It's just all about opportunity. Now, before I get to my number 1 pick for 2024 American League Rookie of the Year, I do have to mention some honorable mentions, as literally any of the guys on this list are capable of winning the award in the right situation for them, as well as perhaps some injuries or unfortunate situations to others. So, let's start with the big 3 Baltimore guys, which honestly could actually probably be a big 5, 6, or 7 Baltimore guys. But with the right trade or right lineup situation, any of Coby Mayo, Heston Kjerstad, or Colton Cowser could win Rookie of the Year as well. The problem is, each of these guys might not get the opportunity because of others blocking them on the roster, or they'll simply end up hitting in the bottom 3 of the order if they do get called up because their team is so deep right now. There's the Boston guys, Roman Anthony and Kyle Teal. Both are very talented and very capable of becoming Rookie of the Year, but I think it's more likely that they could contend for the award in 2025, as they might not join the team until later in the season, but you never know. Minnesota's Brooks Lee. Lee is another guy who's probably ready, but just isn't guaranteed playing time. But you never know on a team that has Byron Buxton and Carlos Correa, right? And Yankees catcher Austin Wells has the talent if all the cards fall correctly, but he'll most likely hit in the bottom three. And even if he does get the majority of starts behind the plate, we'll see. His counting stats just might not be as good hitting lower in the order. Let's go to my number one choice for Rookie of the Year in the American League. Number one is Jackson Holliday of the Baltimore Orioles. And, I guess if you're listening carefully, I was talking about the big three Baltimore guys, and you might have wondered, wait, what? Where's Jackson Holliday? Obviously, he's my favorite to win the award. And yes, I could be contradicting myself since it's possible Baltimore could call him up later in the season. But, he's only hit 13 home runs and 541 minor league at-bats so far, but he simply is the real deal. Baltimore benefited a draft pick from Gunnar Henderson winning Rookie of the Year last year, and they know they could make that 2 in a row with Holliday being their best bet. I think that, along with his pedigree, their desire to win this year, pressure from the fans, all of this will lead to him being on their opening day roster. Is it possible he starts the season hitting in the lower third? Absolutely. But I still can't imagine it remaining that way for that long, even with how deep that lineup already is. His Rookie of the Year numbers could look something like a .290 average with 15 home runs and 85 runs, 85 RBI. Now, I understand that those numbers actually not as gaudy as Camanero's, but I do believe he's more likely to achieve those numbers or perhaps even surpass them. So what do you think? It's time to tell me what your opinion is. Because believe it or not, I actually do like hearing your opinions as much as I like to spout off about mine. So comment below and like the video as well. The fact that you've watched this to the end shows that you don't hate it, right? Or that would make you the sucker. So do me a solid, hit the like button, and while you're at it, subscribe to the channel as well if you haven't done so already. Thanks a lot.